And this misunderstanding has come because of the projections of those who work in the area of origin of life. They do one little thing and then they extrapolate it, and then they work with the press to ramp it up even more, and they project as if they really know it. And so the layperson reads this and says, you see, scientists understand. And then it's not just the layperson. Scientists think that other scientists understand all of this, but they do not. There's a great negative outcome of this beyond just leading the audience, leading the general public astray. What happens ultimately is you end up with 100 million people in the United States that no longer believe this. And then you have the scientific elite saying, why is there 100 million people that don't buy into this? And that distrust will go beyond just that particular topic. It will extend into other topics. And so it yields a distrust of science.
So James Tour, he is a organic chemist and professor at Rice University.
So organic chemistry just means all the molecules, all the atoms, all the stuff that you think of with chemistry, but instead of mixing salt into water and watching it do stuff, you are dealing with the chemicals and molecules that make up a cell.
Yes.
So he builds like little cars out of molecules and
yes, he's also an expert in nanobot technology.
Because it's all kind of that same realm of super, super, super small molecules and piecing them together to make the machines that make up our cells. That's organic chemistry and all kinds of other cool stuff, and that's the nanotechnology. So he's a professor at Rice in, I think, 4 different fields. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant guy, and very sincere, passionate Christian.
Yes.
And but what's great is when he deals with evolution, you will hear him deal with it on a scientific basis.
Right.
But he will rip it to shreds.
Yeah.
So
this is a clip on the misunderstandings of origin of life and how it works from an organic chemist perspective. So let's just hop in.
This is how far the misunderstanding has gone. Even science professors, even biology professors, think that there is a near building of life, that we understand all the ways to build life. We do not. Not only have none of the molecules been made ab initio under prebiotic-like conditions to make the homochiral molecules that are made. Remember, we need 4 classes of molecules. We need the nucleic acids, and then the homochiral systems that for the amino acids, which then need to be built up into protein structures.
okay, hang on. Pause. Homochiral.
Okay.
You know what chirality is?
I've heard him talk about it. He's like, we can't even get the chirality right. And it was something that was kind of recently discovered where it's like, we didn't even know about chirality previously.
Think like science textbook. You got the hexagons and you got the H's and the O's and all the stuff hanging off of each other. When you build a molecule, like you can put the H on this side or you can put the H on this side. You can put the O over here or you can put the O over there. And so depending on whether you build it to the left or to the right, you call it a left-handed molecule or a right-handed molecule, depending on how the molecule, whether it's shaped that way or that way. All of the molecules in your cells, every single one that builds up life is left-handed. So you like pour 2B, chemistry happens. You get an even mixture, left and right. And so you'd think that if out of the primordial ooze, molecules just bumped together and made a cell, that they would be an even number of left and right. But no, the entirety of the molecules in a human cell are left-handed. So what he's saying is, like, not only do you need all this stuff, but you also need it in a very specific form. You need some way to sort out the left-handed from the right-handed and only take and use and build with the left-handed molecules. And so that's what he's trying to describe is like, we don't know how to even do that. We'll let him keep going.
Which have to be built up into the polycarbohydrate structures. And then we need the lipids, which also are chiral. All of these we need in homochiral form. We don't know how to do this in any prebiotic type scenario at all. These have not been made. and then to assemble these into a cell. It's never been done. So there's a gross misunderstanding. And this misunderstanding has come because of the projections of those who work in the area of origin of life. They do one little thing and then they extrapolate it, and then they work with the press to ramp it up even more, and they project as if they really know it. And so the layperson reads this and says, you see, scientists understand. And then it's not just the layperson. Scientists think that other scientists understand all of this, but they do not. There's a great negative outcome of this beyond just leading the audience, leading the general public astray. What happens ultimately is you end up with 100 million people in the United States that no longer believe this. And then you have the scientific elite saying, why is there 100 million people that don't buy into this? And that distrust will go beyond just that particular topic. It will extend into other topics. And so it yields a distrust of science.
Okay. Let me explain to you just a little bit of what he was talking about, how scientists kind of cook the books. So you'll say, hey, guess what? We put all the chemicals that make up the lipid cell membrane. And guess what? When we put all of those chemicals together, they formed naturally into a ring. They formed naturally into a membrane. So there you go. We did it, folks. We proved that if you put the chemicals together, they'll form a cell membrane. Yeah, I knew it. That's how it happened. But what they don't tell you is they used absolutely pure chemicals. They used industrial strength amounts of it. And they produced 98% junk and 2% lipid bilayer cell membrane. And then in like 2 seconds flat, the 98% junk ripped apart and killed the cell membrane that they made. But what they post in the headline is, we made a cell membrane all on its own, or a cell membrane happened all on its own. But what they don't tell you is like that doesn't prove anything. Like that doesn't actually help you get closer to answering the origin of life.
I feel like that's kind of like building like a Lego structure, and it stays up for like 5 seconds and then just falls apart.
Yes.
You're like, look what we did. And then it's like, but it's only like part of the structure.
And it's even worse because it's like you could take a picture of the 5 seconds that it was up and be like, look at that, guys. We did it. We like built the thing. But you don't realize. And then again, to his point of like, you have all the talking heads who believe each other and pat each other on the back and aren't doing real science. And by real science, I mean pushing the question hard to try to find the truth, not just demonstrating your acuity on the talking point, but pushing the science hard to find an answer. And once normal people realize that that's not what you're doing, I just don't actually want to listen to you really on anything anymore. On climate change, on, anyway.
And so he's saying it kind of pushes a distrust into the...
Yeah, because scientists won't be honest.
Yeah.
And what else are you not being... What of the other popular talking points have you fallen in line with that I can't... And that's what's hard is like I genuinely don't know.
Well, and we want people and kids to be inspired to go pursue these scientific things in light of learning more about God's creation and all these things. And if you keep making the scientific community this like constant distrust mechanism, it will de-incentivize that and cause this cultural shift to things that may not be as valuable.
Yeah. And science is really, really hard to do. I mean, you have to spend decades hyper-focused, sometimes on a single topic to get one result that is unassailable, that you can say, we actually know this. And it's not fun. It's not sexy. It's not cool necessarily. And there are very few people who are called to do that kind of intensely focused work, to make their entire life, decades of their life, about finding one scientific fact that's absolutely unassailable.
Well, that's what I love about James Tour as well, because he talks about, and he in other interviews, he's talked about how he ascribes all of his academic success to his daily Bible meditation. And which is just fascinating to me. I'm like, how does that even connect? But our dog's right here asleep dreaming. Hey, wake up. Wake up. But
His daily Bible reading.
yes, his daily Bible reading. And so he's very knowledgeable on these things that people would say, oh, that's like secular, right? That's not
Right.
that's not evangelism, that's not pastoral. This is like a secular field. But then in his videos, he's like, right in the middle of the video, he'll be like, if you do not believe in the physical resurrection of Jesus, send me an email and we will hop on a Zoom call and I will explain to you why I believe in the physical resurrection of Jesus. And he's seen lots of people give their life to the Lord through those phone calls because, you have such a established, intelligent man that also believes in the physical resurrection of Jesus. Okay, why do you?
Yeah.
If you're inquisitive at all, you're gonna ask why this such a successful organic chemist would believe that.
Yeah.
But this next part of it is really interesting because this is I love
this part.
Yes.
I like whenever I think about this video, this is actually the part that I think about because it's so. I'll just let you watch it.
Because the narrative, like you said, is that with given lots of time, then eventually
That's always you bring up like
randomness
how
creates.
or why or this doesn't make sense and it's always like, well, given enough time, anything could happen.
Well, and I think that was the main form of propaganda in our schooling system is that idea that time is a creative mechanism. If you give enough time, then created things come out of it. But you see that in none of reality.
Yeah.
You don't see that anywhere.
Yeah.
There's nothing that, given randomness and time, ends up in an intelligible, creative work.
Yeah, if you gave us enough time and we just sat here,
And we're just like,
no, we would become skeletons. Like we would be falling apart and
we're
dripping and oozing and given enough time, everything falls apart. Everything falls over. Everything falls down. Everything degrades.
Right.
Anyway, we'll let James. We're getting ahead of him.
Okay.
We're stealing his thunder.
Some people argue that since there's been hundreds of millions of years available, the probability that there's the chance that these things could happen in hundreds of millions of years. But that's not true. Time actually can be an enemy when it comes to organic synthesis. Prebiotic synthesis is before biology. So one has to make chemicals. Many of the chemicals that need to be made for life are kinetic products, meaning that they're not the most thermodynamically stable form. For example, carbohydrates, which is the main class of compounds. These are the units that hook together DNA. These are the units that have identifying aspects on cell structure. These are the units that the cell is going to need for the energy of life. Carbohydrates are kinetic products, meaning that if they should form, they would decompose. They decompose over time. And relatively short amounts of time, they decompose. The very reactions that make them, unless somebody is there to pull them out, to fish them out, to stop the process and to put them in a bottle under inert conditions in a freezer. And not just one, there's many, many different types you have to do this. They end up going through a process of what's referred to as caramelization, meaning that they polymerize. The very aldol reactions that were used to make them just continue. And you get polyaldols, you get polycondensation reactions, and they caramelize. Or they undergo, with formaldehyde, which is a presumed prebiotic chemical, they undergo rapid Cannizzaro reactions. So the aldehyde
reaction
is oxidized to formic acid, and this nice carbohydrate that you made has just been reduced. So the aldehyde from the carbohydrate has gone back to an alcohol. So there's competing reactions. So time does not solve the issue. The other problem is if you had 400 million years to get to a certain point in a synthesis of a particular class of compounds, now you run out of material. Anytime you do synthesis, you run out of material, even when you've optimized the yields, and you got to go back to the beginning. Well, say it took you 400 million years to get to a certain point on a synthesis. Now you have to go back and make more. But how do you go back and make more? because nature never kept a laboratory notebook, doesn't know how to go back, never kept a record. So even if it could make more, it doesn't know how to, so it's got to start all over again somehow. But it doesn't know how to start over again, doesn't know why to start over again, because it doesn't know what it's going toward. So if you look at it, people have been trying for a long time. If we just take Miller-Urey.
Okay, so the first
example.
If you listen very carefully, anytime an evolutionist talks, you will hear them say, evolution did. They will use a verb, and they will put like evolution verbed. Evolution made, evolution produced, evolution.
Right.
You know, or they say it must have, or it needed to, or it, all of those words, any kind of will or purposive, what you are describing is intelligent design.
Yeah.
And you cannot have an amoral, uncaring, nebulous, unpersonal force with an intelligent design.
Right.
If you want to ascribe verbs, action verbs, or must-haves or needed tos, those all belong to a personality and an intelligent design.
Yeah. It seems to me just a convenient way to ignore responsibility, moral responsibility.
Well,
Do you think that's the case?
I'm sure
I
that
bring
you
up
could.
that argument.
I'm sure that you could hyper-focus on, if you're just hyper-focusing on the science, right? But you cannot get away from the design argument, or from the teleological argument, the purposive. This must have come to be like this. This was an aimed at goal. How perfectly put together the cell or the human body or life in general or our ecosystems or all this stuff. It must have, it needed to. And when you look at it and you study it, you can't get away from that conclusion that it must have or needed to, or there was a purposive will behind creating this. But you can't say evolution created. You can't put evolution in the noun to all those verbs. You can only put a person. It can only be God. That's the only noun that you can put attached to those verbs. And those verbs are self-evident. That's something made or needed to or purposed, these things. And then you just swap out the word evolution, to, I don't know.
Over the last couple of years, I've watched quite a few of these debates that James Tour has with these people that are more on the affirmative of, we do have a good understanding of origin life. We do have good explanations. And the main tone that I hear is that James Tour is negative. And if we're going to find a solution, then all the problems he puts out is counterproductive to the affirmative things that we have found. And that I feel like is the main consensus from what I've seen, counter to what James is saying.
That people are mad about it.
Well, they're like, hey, we're not going to get anywhere with you being so negative and pointing out all the flaws in our research.
Right.
And they're like, we should all be positive. We need to advance origin of life, and we need to walk towards discovering it. And Tor is like, he doesn't necessarily think it's outside of the realm of possibility that we understand origin of life in our lifetime. But what he talks about is that the closer we get, and this is a video from 5 years ago that we're watching, the closer we get, the more complexity that we understand and the more factors we don't know. So the more that we know about it, the further from an explanation we actually get to.
I remember talking to a guy in my living room who was like, well, we just don't know how it works yet. And that was exactly my point to him, is I was like, bro, the more we find out, the further away we get from it making any sense to be evolution. And he just like, it'll make sense. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll find the mechanism. Right. We'll find the way. We'll find. No, not going to happen.
Do you think, I know a lot of people have been talking about this and there's kind of some debate. Do you think we are getting more of a awakened society to creation being the mechanism of life right now? Like, there's more people that are like kind of coming against the general propaganda consensus that the schooling system has given us.
I heard a preacher once. He said, atheism. How did it go? It was something like atheism does not create an intelligent or a rational society. Atheism produces a magical and superstitious society. Because you cannot live without wonder. I mean, it's baked into the created order. When you look at the created order, you're full of wonder. And so...
Yeah, just look at a sunset.
Yeah, and look at a hummingbird. Look at a bumblebee. Like, golly.
Dude, a hummingbird is
Look
special.
at a kid. Look at a child. Like, golly. Right. Anyway.
Child walking, everybody in the room is just like...
Yes. You cannot live without a sense of wonder or a sense of intrigue or
purpose.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That sense of the purposefulness of what's going on.
It's almost like the wonder is partially connected to the purpose.
Definitely. They are totally linked. And so when you, like, this was Nietzsche, he said, like, we have killed God. And he was not saying, like, woohoo, we did it, we killed God. What he was saying is like, oh no.
Yeah.
We have cut out the thing that organizes society. What do we do now? And the preacher's point in saying you don't create an intelligent and rationalistic society, you create a superstitious society, is because once you cut out an all-powerful, all-loving God, you go looking for wonder and purpose and intelligences out there, what you find is all the haunts and spooks and ghosts and spirits that are there,
aliens.
That were there when you believed in God, but at least God was the Lord and Master over all of them.
And gave you some comfort and some joy and some direction and clarity.
Exactly. When he's not there to protect you, but you know you need it, that's all that's left is the
we all
spirits.
know, like, when we put our head down on the pillow and go to bed at night, we all feel that sense of how vulnerable we are. And we may point our finger and blame it on the imaginary home intruder that's going to break into our house and that fear. But I think often it's something deeper. It's like, oh, I am so out of my element of, like, this, the coming judgment, I guess, in the sense of by death. Yeah. Like, this thing is inevitable. Like, how do I grapple with that reality in my life? And oftentimes I think it's ignoring, that's kind of how you grapple with it.
So you can either go down the full existentialist rabbit hole of atheism or the Nietzsche, Übermensch kind of thing. You can go down that road, or you can lean into the wonder and into the purposefulness, but without a sense of God. What that will take you to eventually is superstition and the New Age, that kind of arena. So
at least a society, maybe not an individual specifically.
Are people waking up generally to evolution is not enough? Maybe. I think it's so ingrained to us now. But I think that sense of, like, revolt, maybe, not an actual intellectual, like, let's truly reconsider this. But I think just the revolt of, like, I need wonder. I need something purposeful. I need something meaningful in my life. But I don't think necessarily it would be a mistake for Christians to say, yes, and now they're all going to come back to church.
Right.
Like, no, that's not how this is going to happen. They're going to go to DMT. They're going to go to the New Age. They're going to go to all kinds of other spiritual experiences that are readily available.
Yeah. Let's continue a little bit more on tour here, and I think there's quite a bit more of just the multitude of angles that he's coming at this issue from. Example,
where Miller and Urey took some basic chemicals that are presumed on a prebiotic earth, hydrogen cyanide, formaldehyde, and CO2, and they put those across a high voltage, simulating lightning. You can get some racemic amino acids out of those. But those racemic amino acids were racemic. Okay, that was in 1952. That was 2/3 of a century ago. What has happened in 2/3 of a century since Miller-Urey in other fields? Well, we've had human space flight. We have satellite connectivity. We have the internet. We have the entire silicon era of microchips, and we have computer technology. We have all of this. In the same 66 years, 2/3 of a century, we are still exactly where Miller and Urey were. We make a barrage of stereo-scrambled chemicals, nowhere close to even knowing how to make them and hook them together. They got to get hooked together in the proper order. We are clueless on this, clueless, because time doesn't solve this. Even with all our ingenuity, time is not going to solve the problem. You let these chemicals that have been made, you let them sit around, even for months, and you can look even in the origin of life researchers themselves. When they've let these go for weeks, they show the degradation of these in a period of weeks. Weeks is the twinkling of an eye when it comes to prebiotic timescales. The chemicals decompose. The environment for the chemicals, environment rich in ammonia, is going to turn carbonyls into imines. These are going to cause further destruction. The ammonia environment itself is quite basic. You're going to have extended aldol reactions coming on. So to think that the molecules could be made and sit there waiting for other molecules to come in, it doesn't happen. Organic chemistry doesn't work that way. Any student that is lazy enough to set up reactions and like to go home for the weekend without working them up pays the price for that, with a depressed yield generally. As soon as the reactions are done, or as soon as what you want is the optimized yield, you have to stop that reaction, get it away from the starting materials, or else what happens is it goes on to polymerized product. Especially when you're making kinetic products, which is not the thermodynamically most stable product, which is exactly what you get in many of the chemicals that are needed for life. So time is actually the enemy.
Yeah. So two things.
Boom.
Two things. The comparison to other advancements that we've made in those 66 and a half years, incredible. Like the amount of computing advancements, absolutely.
And since this video, AI.
Yes. AI, yeah, exactly. And then this is just re-emphasizing, because you have all of these facts that point towards like, hey, the real organic chemists going in there, see how these things operate, see how all these chemicals work together, and say, hey, that's not how it works. Yet your narrative forces you to say it must have worked that way. Because and often the argument from the other side is, well, Christians just have blinders on of these facts, so they're forcing it to be a created order. They're looking at everything out of the lens of a created order, and it's
right.
And it couldn't be more clear that it's the opposite way. It's like all of these facts point towards random chance, time not being a creative mechanism.
Yep.
For organic life.
Well, and I feel like we just have to say it again very slowly. I don't want to be rude, but seriously, random chance is not a creative mechanism.
Yeah.
Okay,
in any scenario.
So there's this
in
guy.
Any scenario.
If you watch Francis Schaeffer, How Then Shall We Live, he talks about there's this guy, there's this whole age of kind of rationalism and, in the mid 20th century. And this guy was like, oh yeah, randomness like created our world. And look at all this creativity and all this life and all this order and structure that came from randomness. And he was a musician. He was a composer. So that's what he did, is he would like throw sticks onto sheet music, onto like lines, empty lines of sheet music. And wherever the sticks landed, he would make music out of it. And you can go listen to it. It sounds terrible. It sounds like garbage, because it is garbage, because randomness is not creative. And then like there's another guy he's talking about in this same segment. He goes, another guy who's kind of in that philosopher, I'll use randomness in my art, and because randomness created all the order I see in life. And so I'll use randomness in my art, and that'll create something. And he loved mushrooms. He loved to study mushrooms. He was like a fungus, he picked them and studied them and all this stuff. And he was like, yeah, but if I did that in my hobby with mushrooms, I would die. Right. Like if I just chose randomly, and so again, We'll just say it very slowly. Not rudely, but just randomness is not creative. Never, ever. In no other part of our lives, except in this one story that we tell, is randomness creative. Period.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think we've exhausted this. Yeah. Do you have anything else to say on this topic?
Oh man. I just want to keep
It's just like, I feel like, okay, so I feel like what happens often is it's just like, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, you're right. It's just this back and forth of like, doesn't work like that. And then it's this constant, like, there's no actual substance. There's no, it seems like there's a divide where there's no ability for these different viewpoints to actually come together and discuss what the actual mechanisms and the evidence points to.
Right.
Because it's all out of, well, this is the lens that I see it.
right.
This is
Right.
what I've been
That
taught.
is why it is so hard to talk about it, is because you are coming to the evidence with an interpretation and already taking all the facts and you're starting to build the puzzle, and you've already got the picture on the box, and you're trying to build the puzzles, right? So if you're working with a third of the puzzle pieces and you're fighting over, no, it goes here, no, it goes here, no, it goes here, no, it goes here. It's not that the other person's an idiot. It's that you both are trying to create two different pictures out of the puzzle pieces that you have. And that's why you can't even talk about it.
Yeah, imagine if you were building a puzzle with someone and y'all just like kept fighting over the puzzle pieces enough to where you just kept breaking the borders of the puzzle. You're like,
But that is
yeah,
kind of
it
how
goes
these
here, you know?
discussions go, is
Yeah.
because it starts way beyond the science. It goes way beyond that to what you are already believing about the God who is there or who you don't think is there. The mechanisms that he would have used or that he definitely wouldn't have used. Whether the men in the white lab coats are probably right or whether you're distrustful of them. All those things come preloaded before you even start to talk about the science, about the facts, about the research.
so is there a way to actually legitimately, with a kind heart, connect these two camps, like the atheist evolution camp and creationism camp, with a guy like James Tour?
Yeah, I really do think one of the things that stumps me is kind of that God of the gaps. But, there's an evolution of the gaps. It's like, okay, so we had all the chemicals, and then evolution happened, and now we have life. It's like, wait a minute. It's like evolution of the gaps. Just stick in another couple 100 million years, and presto, we got the evolution. I think, though, one of the gravest misunderstandings, and I don't even think Christians fully realize what they have, is that sense of wonder again, of like that wonder is the spark of scientific inquiry, and you have to be in awe, in wonder, to prompt that scientific inquiry. And atheistic science is running off the fumes of a Christian worldview, and they're almost spent. I mean, just quite frankly, they're almost all gone. And it is in fact the opposite, is when you believe that there's a wonderful, creative, intelligent God who made everything, that actually prompts the scientific inquiry and exploration. And so, I think it goes both ways. If Christians can just say like, okay, let's keep looking. I'm with you. Let's just keep looking. But again, if the atheists will just keep looking, will like open up those eyes to wonder again, instead of just shutting out with an iron dome of a sky over your head. Imagine if there's no heaven above. Okay, let's just the science. If you could crack open the heavens and be in wonder again, I think that probably to fall in love with God and what he made on both sides.
Yeah, I think it's just so important for believers to to have a good understanding of science and technology and be a part of these cultural conversations in a significant way. I think that's just something that we have dropped the ball on, and it's hard to really pinpoint what the problem is there, because obviously there's different levels of intellect. So there's in both sides, secularism and in the church, there is people of varying IQs, interests, and so, but I do think this kind of it seems like a resurgence of the need and the desire to understand the reason for your faith, like why you believe it, even with the West Huffs and understanding the Christian history and why do I believe Jesus rose from the dead? Can I give an actual logical argument for and present the evidence and that leads me to that conclusion? And then can I take an objective view of this evidence and say, well, it actually seems like more likely this is the conclusion. But then there is this thing where it's like the carnal mind does not understand the things of God, where it's just you need to be transformed. You need to be born again. And
that is so true.
Hard not, trying not to sound over charismatic or Pentecostal, but you need to be made into a new creation.
Yeah.
And be given a new mind to even comprehend these things that are outside of the realm of just logic. Like, logic is your friend with a Christian worldview.
But it's a tool.
Yeah, exactly.
It is not an end or an idol.
Because there's an encounter. You need an encounter with the God that is alive.
I think that one thing that we can never get, and this might be the last thing that we say about it, but one thing that we can never, ever, ever get away from in this, I just keep thinking of, blessed is the man who does not stand in the way of sinners. So a cradling and loving sin in your heart will shut you off from the voice of God. Stand in the way of sinners. Walk in the way of sinners. Stand in the way of. I'll just look it up.
Because it's often not just an intellectual pursuit. Like, more times than not. Like, because we want to think of ourselves in a bubble. It's like, I don't need any emotion to come up with my logical beliefs. But you are swayed by your human nature.
Right.
Like, and you are an emotional being, and your personal experiences shape the evidence you want to pick up and throw away.
Yeah.
And more times than not, like, we were both in campus ministry, and that's a lot of what you see in the university is it's like, well, even if that stuff was true, didn't God flood the earth?
Right.
And then there it is. That's when you've hit the heart of the problem. It's not, you don't want God to be real.
Well, okay, so anyway, this is the one that I wanted to get to. Nor sits in the seat of scoffers.
Okay.
And to think, I don't care what your IQ is, I don't care what your intelligence is, I don't care how you think logic is the answer, you think you're rational, whatever, no one is immune to that social pressure of scoffing. The counsel of the wicked and the seat of the scoffer. And you got to have some guts.
Okay.
To stand up to a society that is going to laugh at you and mock at you. Haha, you believe in Sky Daddy. You have to actually love the truth to be able to get away from a world that will tempt you and a world that will laugh at you. And no one, not the most rational, intelligent, atheist, logical person, can get away from that pull, which is trying to yank on you, of just laughing at you.
Well, because all you have is your life. That's all you have.
That's true.
In a Christian worldview, we don't live for this life. We live for a life that will last forever. And that's what's amazing. That gives us hope and purpose. But that right there, that exact point is so funny because, like, with Alex O'Connor in Islam, he does not mess around with Islam, even though intellectually he should be giving Islam even a harder time than he does the Christian world.
Crumble like a house of cards.
But
he's only got one life.
Exactly.
And they'll end it.
Yeah.
They'll take it out.
As always, if you want to give to the show and support what we're doing here, you can go over to divinecreative.org and click the little donate button or the give button and donate to Get to the Heart. You can also just share this episode and like and subscribe to support what we're doing. And as always, we end each and every show with a prayer. So you or I this time, or Victoria, do you want to pray this time? Yeah, let's go. My wife. Okay. My wife is awesome. I love her.
Lord, thank you so much for this time that we've had together. I just pray that you reveal yourself to each and every person who joined on this chat, who is questioning and really trying to seek truth. It says in the scripture, Lord, that those who seek you will find you. And so I just pray that and I ask that in your name, Jesus. Thank you so much for guiding the conversation and guiding Michael and Bailey into some really great conversations and wonderful revelations. We just love you so much and we're grateful to do this. We're grateful to get to love you and to serve you in any way that we can. And we're just grateful for you. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
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 All right. Sayonara, y'all.